Hello and welcome to the Business of What's Next. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I'm here with Carey Parks, founder of Talent Kind Search. This show explores how ambitious leaders cut through the noise, decide what matters, and sets up their business for what's next. Carey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So let us know a little bit about, so it's HR, I believe,
Yep.
and talent acquisition,
Mhm.
but tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you created your business, Talent Kind Search.
Well, I come from decade-long careers in traditional corporate human resources, talent acquisition, working in varying industries. And about a year ago, I decided to jump to the other side of the desk and open up a firm, work for myself, regain control of my decision making, my flexibility, and my prioritization, and start Talent Kind Search. I focus on executive search for companies, which really don't have to be executive level for me to work on. It's really more leader level and above that I
Mhm.
specialize in. And then HR consultancy, which just kind of goes hand in hand. So I do both and I love it and I wouldn't change a thing and I will never jump back to the other side of the desk again.
Don't blame me there.
Yeah.
So tell a little bit about the name Talent Kind Search. It's kind of a when you first approach it, you don't really realize immediately what it is, but go ahead and let us
Yeah.
know that story.
That came from I was getting assistance with a marketing person about coming up with a name, and I had lots I'm not super creative when it comes to cool names, so I was thinking of really boring stuff. And he said he was getting to know me, asking me questions, and he said, "Are there any other words of, particular significance to you?" And I said, "Well, the word kind is very meaningful to me. I really can imagine how we would use that." And, I explained how and it's really because that's one of the primary things that I have 2 kids that are now 17 and 20, but I raised them with understanding that, as we get older, we're all gonna have preferences. We're gonna like certain things better than others, like certain people, be drawn to certain people. But, and that's okay. When you get to be older, you're not friends with everybody anymore, but you don't have to be, but you do need to be kind to everyone. That everyone to be deserves to be treated with some basic kindness. And it's just kind of grown from there. I don't know if it's cheesy or not, but, like, I sign all my emails kindly, Carrie, because I think that helps put an edge, if there's so much to be misread in written
Mhm.
context, and so I think if something comes across as harsh, but then I've signed it kindly, Carrie, then you might rethink, "Oh, that's probably not how she intended that to come out because she's, you know, stating what the intended purpose is," but
Yeah, I imagine when you're working with talent acquisition, HR, and the people element is the one of the well, obviously the largest part of what you're going to be dealing with. Having that kind of psychological comfort or psychological safety approach really does pay dividends for you.
Mhm. It really does, and it's interesting. I don't know if it's one of those what you focus on grows bigger or if kindness is kind of trending now, and I'd like to say maybe I started that, but I don't know if I can take credit for it. But, I see lots of stuff on LinkedIn, people posting about the strength and kindness and that, that kindness is strength. Nice is not necessarily that it's, not weak, but it's not the same thing. And, kind is a conscious decision that you make rather than reaction.
Interesting. So, what drew you to this line of work as far as like helping businesses hire the right people or other HR issues?
Mhm. Well, it's interesting because this feels a little bit like I've come full circle. My first so I actually got an HR degree in college, which I'm one of the, those few people that actually utilized my degree for most of my career. But my very first true HR job, I worked at an executive search firm, and I was what they called a research manager. So I hate to say this, but I'm going to admit the internet was not super, robust at the time. It was kind of new. We
Mhm.
were all still fascinated by it. I feel like a caveman talking about that. But anyway, my job was lecture research. We were hired by clients to place
Mhm.
positions. It was a retained firm, so it only did the retained searches. So we were the ones that were going to fill that role. And I did all the research. I looked up their competitors. I saw what I could, looked and knew where I could find to find out who's currently in a similar role to our client company that I could target. And that's one of the biggest things I think a lot of people don't realize from executive search. That's just one of the many benefits, but one of the biggest is the candidate pool that you get with us. We're not posting a job posting and only reviewing people that apply. We're going
Mhm.
after gainfully employed people doing exactly what or close to what you want them to be doing for you and figuring out what their pain points are and how we can solve that by bringing them over to your business. So,
All right. That's great. And I like how you say you were researching. So it's kind of close to a research piece is kind of close to my heart. I was a molecular plant biologist for 16 years. So now completely different kind of research, but the whole principle applies. You're,
yeah.
you're looking for the best answer
Hmm.
based on the information you're given, and you develop tests for that.
Yeah.
Similar as much. So I'm sure you've taken that research aspect into your current business as well.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. And how does this let us know a little bit how that and your current now approach to let's go and get into some talent acquisition. What because I've seen a lot of this. I run into this with businesses as well. Talent acquisition is always on the forefront of an owner's mind, whether they need it, want it, don't want it, but need it. There's a whole slew of things.
Hmm.
So let us know your approach to helping a business owner acquire the right talent.
Well, it's a strategic approach. It's not just drop me over a job description and I'll do my best to find some people you can throw into that role. The
Hmm.
approach is really more long term. It's looking at where are you now? What are your plans for where you'd like to be? How does your leadership team look in supporting those plans for growth or whatever it may be? And how then I can help, what traits do people that you already have on your team have? And are there any places that you need someone with a stronger this, so that that can be a well-rounded team? It's just a lot more than throwing me a job description and me finding you someone with those skills. There's lots of soft skills that come in with especially leadership roles. You got to have the experience, of course, but, as we've all experienced, everybody doesn't fit in every culture, and that's pretty significant. So I'm looking at the business culture as well as their strategic growth plans and just making sure that what I'm doing and the person I'm bringing into this, is going to fit into that long-term plan as well as solving today's issues.
Yeah. I imagine well, understanding the team, not just the owner asking for you to help
Mhm.
hiring is vastly important. The culture, the team. How do you go? How do you approach that when you're stepping into a business for just talent acquisition, and now you've got to understand their culture for years worth of culture, years worth of team before you help them make a very well educated research
Mhm.
decision.
Well, ideally, I'm getting the opportunity, even if it's, often Zoom, because I do work with, clients
Mhm.
nationwide. But even if it's Zoom, even if it's for 10 minutes, getting everybody on that particular team in the same room so that I can
Mhm.
get a feel for the dynamic and the personalities and and even getting their input. I'm ultimately going to be answering more than likely to the CEO, but I want to hear about the people that are going to also be working closely with this person and what it is that they find important or what they ultimately think would make the team stronger. And there's no faster way to get to that than there is, seeing people, I want to say in the flesh, but I don't know if video conference is really in the flesh, but having that, you can really get
Yeah.
a feel for the style
Mhm.
of the team and what kind of person might fit there. And a lot of it's instinctive, just after a career
Mhm.
of hiring and doing HR work for businesses and working with humans. Some of there's just an instinctive way that I can tell, oh yeah, this person
Mhm.
would be eaten alive here, or this person would fit right
Right.
in.
Do you use the team itself as in helping you decide, as in you brought in some people, now you're gonna run them through the team, or do you just run them through an individual, just like the deciding manager?
It depends. It depends because every company and every team and the level
Mm,
of the team is different and how much the CEO does or doesn't want people involved. Maybe there's a team member who they're working with currently that they need to bring up to speed on some other things, and that is known, to leadership and not necessarily to that individual yet. So they don't want,
mhm,
they're not interested yet in their opinion about someone we're bringing in that may be, filling in some gaps that they're already seeing on the leadership team. So I do to the extent that the CEO or whoever they may be that's the leader of this hiring project, to the extent that they welcome it, I'll take as much as I can get of interacting with the rest of the team as long as they think it's a worthwhile thing to do.
okay. And so I tend to work with these mid-stage businesses, whether they're at they have a developing team, like they have their leadership team, but they don't really define themselves quite as the leadership team
Uh-huh.
yet. They just know they are.
Right.
Or I'm working with somebody who's taking that first scale step into solopreneur versus I need people to support what I do so I can do more for my business.
Mhm.
Do you serve a client similar to that?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Absolutely, both.
Okay. Awesome. So I wanted to make sure of that because I also I run into this unintentionally, but I've developed I've had to develop a way to help managers or even owners kind of unpack all their hats. And that's usually the first indicator, in my experience, that they're looking for new talent. Is they're starting to talk about wanting to take that step back from doing everything and getting some help. And it's actually forced me to even create a workshop. I call it Manager's Challenge. I don't know. It's a bad name. I'm not great at names either. But it helps them identify everything they do, unpack it, find out what they really want to be working on, what they don't want to be working on, and naturally, these positions sort of manifest themselves. And the great thing about that is it's based on what they do and their processes. So the job description almost kind of writes itself.
Mhm.
Now, that's where I kind of like top off at. Like, okay, you have these people um, if they were to bring something to you, like, okay, I have a great description. It's not copy and paste from LinkedIn, but it's we've actually considered it, sat down, worked on it. Um, but now they have to let go. And this is where I find it very interesting. So there's a kind of a two-part question is one, what do you need from an owner when they need to start hiring? And two, can you tell when the owner is saying all the right things, but you're pretty sure they're gonna have a hard time letting go of the role they're trying to hire for?
Mhm. Well, first off, what I need from an owner is, to see me as a trusted partner. And it's funny answering this question from my now perspective, being a newer solopreneur.
Mhm.
So I face the same the same
Yeah.
challenges when I was like, do as I say, not as I do kind of things, possibly. But I definitely need owners that see me as a partner, see the value in the
Agree.
vast, HR and talent acquisition experience that I have. Enough to give me all of the information. That's something I run into sometimes is that they think I don't need to get out in the weeds with some of the questions that I ask, and I
Mhm.
have to explain, the value in giving me the bigger picture and that I can do a better job for them with that. So I just need them to be open-minded. Perhaps they're a little bit uncomfortable. I hope not, but they could be, and that's okay too. But just be open-minded and let me direct the conversation and feel free to ask me why I'm asking questions that I'm asking, and I'm happy to explain if it doesn't seem clear. But I just need somebody who's open to that sees that they need help, that sees that I'm
Mhm.
someone that can help them get the right person in for their business. And I understand, I can relate. It's uncomfortable to let go of something that's
Mhm.
been, it's been your baby. You've done everything
Yeah.
around it the whole time, and now you're having to entrust someone else with it. I completely get that that's hard, really hard.
Yeah, and I've run into that, yeah. I
Mhm.
I call it a founder syndrome. It's
Mhm.
the best way that I've had been able to describe it is they're saying all the right things. I need to step back from this. I don't need to be doing this. And then they get people in and they get very frustrated. They're not doing it the same way they are. And I've kind of had to remind them that, well, they're not you. One,
Or
nobody's going to be as passionate about your business as you.
Mhm.
That once you accept that, and you're always going to be a constant teacher
Mhm.
once they can get over that, then the talent acquisition and their understanding and moving forward in their business works.
Yep.
But if they're still saying all the same things and they're just, like, very frustrated and they're just turning over because nobody's doing it like them, there's where you kinda get stuck. Have you run into some situations like that, and how do you approach that? How do you break that to
Yeah.
the owner?
Yeah, I have run into that, and the most common approach I take that tends to work the best is instead of getting, into the nitty-gritty of all the things that they're getting wound up about that they're not doing exactly like they would,
Mhm,
I'll bring them back up to a bigger look down on what we're doing and what is the outcome that we're looking for here, and how would the things that they were doing get you to that outcome? Let's talk
okay,
about that, and it's kinda
mm,
just reminding what is the outcome? Is it
I
is
like
it
that.
this? Is it growth? Is it, becoming more scalable? All of the things. How is what that person is doing getting you towards that outcome? And if the answer is that they're not, then they're right. And something
Mhm,
was very much wrong there in in our communication. But 9 times out of 10, I'm sure you've seen it too, if not 10 out of 10, let's say 9 out of 10 times, the person they've got is very capable of it. It's just
Mhm.
that they're in the early stage of this founder getting comfortable with letting go. And you have to work through a lot of
Yeah.
that. And you just have
And
to
I've
hopefully
seen
gain the trust of the founder. And
yeah.
now there's that.
I've also seen the excitement factor, like, the owner goes, "Oh, I finally have somebody," and they're really excited, really over the top about this person, and then 6 months later, they're hating their decision.
Yeah. Yep. That's the thing I think of all the time that, like, in theory, this will be amazing. But then in
Mhm.
practice, for that founder, depending on where they are, in their preparation for letting go and growing, you know, in theory, it sounds great, but in practice, they realize it's a lot harder for them than they even were that realized themselves from the beginning. But,
Yeah.
it's just a lot of times with that stuff, not know if you find this too, I find that just acknowledging it, just saying, "Nope, this is a real thing. It's okay that you're feeling that way, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's talk through
Yeah,
it."
yeah. I often try to set expectations up front, like, what are some expectations you have, and what's real and what's not? What has to be true for this person to succeed is another great question, but I really liked yours other question is, like, what outcome are you truly looking for? That might be for my my manager shares something I add because right now, I have them break down all these roles that they're trying to offload into, what would you want this person to do? What would you want this person to discuss with you? And what do you want this person to decide independently? And that really helps write and flesh out those roles,
Mhm. Yep.
or especially for them since it's what they're doing already. And it also kind of creates I guess, a verbal contract going both ways. Like I said, I wanted them to do this, so the person can say, "Hey, you're constantly picking on something that you told me you wanted me to do independently, but you're over my shoulder every five
Uh-huh.
minutes." Kind of helps, if they both agree to this. Kind of helps keep them honest, honestly.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yeah, it's just real easy to get bottlenecked on those certain
mhm,
things, but when you look at what is your ultimate goal and how is this
mhm.
fitting into that, it helps sometimes to loosen that up a little bit.
Hey, are you spinning your wheels trying to figure out what will really boost your business's bottom line? At Emberry Solutions, our profit priority workshop is here to cut through the noise. We help you zero in on what truly matters, aligning your team, optimizing your processes, and magnifying your profits. Imagine your business running smoother than ever, with every decision and effort leading straight to increased profits. That's what focusing on the right priorities can do. Ready to boost your efficiency and profits? Visit Emberry Solutions and let's start making your business work smarter. At Emberry Solutions, we take your business from bottlenecks to breakthroughs. So, in your experience, what's the most common point where a leader or an owner gets stuck in, like, when they decide, okay, the next thing I need to do is start hiring?
I think often what I see is they get stuck in needing some assistance with strategic and prioritization because they're just
Mhm.
they're all over the place. I need this and I need that and I can give this to this,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of times that it's again backing up and starting with them and what they're doing and what is the next, whatever approach you want to take. Do you want to do what is
Mhm.
easiest for you to give up? Then we can do
Mhm.
that if you think that'll help you be more successful with bringing others onto your team. But if we
Yeah.
want to talk strategy, let's look at what strategically is going to be the first thing that would be the most critical step to start working towards this goal that we have. And what position would that be? Okay. And then it
Mhm.
doesn't mean we can't hire for more than one position at a time. It just means we're going to focus on that one first and defining, what is within the scope of that role before we
Mhm.
move on to something else. So we're going to kind of, what did they say? Put a pin in it for a minute. Some of the things that
Yeah.
they're getting overwhelmed with because of all the things that they need to let go of. And there's not one
Mhm.
person that can take all those on. You have to step far back so that you can zoom more in micro and, just create some structure around how we're going
Mhm.
to look at this instead of, the typical entrepreneur that's minds are always going a million different directions and you're you're the CFO, the CMO, the CHRO, the CEO, you're all of those things. So your mind
Yeah.
switches like that.
Uncontained strategic thinking.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, and that is when you said put a pin in the structure you were talking about. I often with my clients, I work with teams, and I think this would work. Maybe it's kind of similar. Is I have them identify like what's your purpose right now, and what are like your major risks that could keep you from attaining that purpose. I'm wondering if does something that sound familiar, like using a line of approach. towards our hiring too. What's the purpose for this individual you want to hire, and what are the risks that would keep them from succeeding, or keep you from being able to truly attain that purpose you're wanting for yourself, for the reason you're
Mhm.
hiring that person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all part of that, exploratory multiple conversations that we're having
Hmm.
is looking ahead, trying to identify risks and ways to, work around that, and address those right up front instead of just, marching right on into what could have been a foreseeable issue that you're
Yeah, yeah.
facing. And a lot of it too is just helping because, founders don't have generally the same mentality as
Mhm.
depending on what level of worker you're talking about, don't have that same mentality. So sometimes it's also helping explain to them how other people are going to be perceiving the person you're bringing in or the role that you're filling or the whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
very
Not
important.
just what do you and your team need. It's like, let's look at the bigger picture as well and trying to avoid those risks. If there are people internally that thought that they would be a shoe in for that role. We've all encountered that where you
Hmm.
create a new position and the CEO is saying, "No, I don't have anybody internally that's a good candidate." Well, they don't. Your internal employees don't agree. They think that they're very good candidates. So that's even
Yeah.
something you need to look
Huh.
ahead because if you want the person that you're investing in and you're investing in me to then help you
Hmm.
invest in this person, you want to set them up for success as best you can. And bringing them into an internal environment that might start out with some resentment from current employees is not the best route either. So that's
Yeah.
those risks you try to, identify in the beginning and solve for as best you can. Sometimes it's just going to happen and you have to have some hard conversations and it could result in some attrition depending on the employee that we're talking about. But
All right. Well, that kind of gets to a kind of a point that I wanted to bring up. Internal, external, hire. We're back to the owners being, did I make a good decision? This it reminds me of the whole trope of hire fast, fire faster. So what is your thought on that? Or is there an approach to that? Is there a way to do that correctly and incorrectly?
so this is going to be, I don't mean it to be like the answer is yes and no, or it's both, but I do think
Okay.
it's important to talk about, hiring fast, but not reckless, and by
Mhm.
fast, I mean, that's a relative term, right? So by
Mhm.
fast, I mean, I've worked with people who they're like, oh, well, this is our process. And it's weeks and weeks long and it's super
Oh,
thorough
okay.
and it's got assessments, which I like assessments. All of it can be done, but it's just, to set it up in the beginning where it can progress more quickly. And often that's just letting the people who are involved know they need to leave time on their calendars open because that's often the scheduling issue as well, trying to get people to move along. But, the risks that we run as executive recruiters is these candidates are good. If you don't take them, somebody else is, and their hiring
Mhm.
process might be faster than yours. So while yours might be good on paper and it really would get you to help figure out who you
Mhm.
want, but what good is that if you're losing your top choices along the way because other companies are able to push through more quickly than you? So I think you need to do it fast-ish, you know,
Mhm.
fast-ish within reason, because you don't wanna
Yeah.
you wanna be comfortable and you wanna have the steps in place, and every company is different about the steps that they wanna take, and I honor those. I will have a conversation if there's things I think that are redundant or unnecessary or, I mean, I know we all as candidates have thought, "Really, I have to fill out this application when I'm giving you my resume," and then you're asking for it again somewhere else. To start to finish,
Yeah,
make
yeah. Understanding the human element would be very important in
yeah,
this because how
yeah.
much are they gonna put up with? Yeah.
Yeah. But then so I agree that you need to do fast, but it's with, I guess, all these caveats that I just said, okay, fast
Yeah.
is good, but, this, that, and the other. And then and fire faster. I would not say that. I do think that there are times where issues are seen pretty early on. And
Mhm.
depending on what they are, sometimes it would be best to just cut your losses. Now, hopefully, if it's someone I found for you, that's not going to be the case. But,
Yeah.
in general, when there's people in those roles, sometimes stuff that there's only so much you can do in a recruiting and hiring process and screening. And sometimes, people are one person when they're going through the process and then they show up to work on the first day with a different personality somehow. You know, sometimes it is
Mhm.
good if you just, if it's not something that you can foresee working on them with and they can become better, if it's a fundamental thing, I do think it's better to just cut your losses for yourself and for them. You know,
Yeah, that's
people
true.
think they're doing you a favor by keeping you on, but you're not doing somebody a favor while they're continuing to acclimate themselves in your business, starting to feel comfortable, continuing to learn your way of doing things, only to then set them back at zero and they're going to start all over again. So
Yeah.
it's another, I guess,
Oh,
with caveat. Don't do it faster though. Never
mhm.
fire faster, but
Alright, okay.
especially in leadership.
Alright,
Yeah,
that's
especially in
that's
leadership.
good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to see your thoughts on that. So I was
Hmm.
just kinda curious because I see that a lot, and just people saying, if it's not right, they're gonna do something to the culture. I'm like, "Well, it takes time to see if somebody's going to affect your culture."
Right. It does.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be a
Alright.
positive effect.
True, true, absolutely. Kind of moving into what you're seeing in this industry or in your general actually, let's go into that real quick. Industries you tend to serve, and one of them we have something in common, but what industries do you have found you or you have found that you like to serve the most?
What's been happening the most is I have a lot of food and beverage
Mhm.
clients. And in particular, I'm getting a little micro niche in the beverage industry. I'm not sure
That's
how or
awesome.
why, but that's what's happening with both candidates and clients. I'm just getting more traction there. I also have some background in digital marketing. So I've
Mhm,
done some work for some digital marketing agencies and I love that. I think those jobs are so interesting. And it's a different, it's a whole different perspective when it's an agency compared to, a
yeah,
business and looking at that. But food and beverage, I got into because when I went out on my own, besides, taking the reins on decisions and strategy
mhm,
and direction and priorities, I also got to take the reins on who do I want to work with? What are my passions and my interests?
mhm,
And, I
mhm,
wish there was a better term than foodie. I think all of us that are cringe
yeah,
sometimes at saying that, but for lack of a better term, I'm one of those, and because a lot of my HR background is in manufacturing, that extends beyond restaurants for
mhm,
me. Um,
mhm,
it extends to, but like I've worked with a company that manufactures equipment that you'll find in the kitchens of commercial restaurants, and I
mhm,
just am fascinated by all of that. So I decided let me intentionally choose to work in an industry that I am passionate about. I've been a administrator of a Facebook. I'm in the Kansas City area and we have a Facebook group that's about Kansas City restaurants. And we have like
mm,
over 65,000 members currently. And I'm one of many, but I'm one of the administrators of that group because I'm one of those people that wants to go, someone says, who has the best onion rings? Like I want to have some ideas, like it's the silly things like that. Besides the bigger stuff, who's coming in, the new places, what's getting popular. So that's just, been my passion for a long time. I love supporting that industry. So I thought, what better way to support than to help with their leadership and with their strategic direction of where they're trying to go.
yeah, like
Yeah.
you, the beverage industry sort of found me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it didn't hurt that I was doing a beverage-based podcast for 2 years, but and bouncing around and trying to get to know them,
Yeah.
because like I said earlier, I had a molecular plant biology. What's that have to do with, other than
Right.
hops? But yeah, it's been very interesting learning about them. So I'm really curious then, from that beverage or food and beverage industry perspective, what trends do you see that those particular leaders in that industry aren't preparing for when it comes to like hiring or HR, but they should be?
I think, there's always going to be some that do well, but I think a lot aren't preparing for just the shift in consumer behavior and in because things have been the same for a long time, and then all of a sudden, we've got all of these seltzers and all these different. I mean, back in the day, it was like you had wine coolers and
Mm,
beer. It seems like, and now you've got
yeah, that's it. Now you
all
got
these
so many
all these
things.
other things, and then with the introduction of THC products into the market,
Mhm.
there's just all of these things, and then I actually just did a LinkedIn post about this sometime this week, I forget, but it was about, their title of the article I read was, "Where has all the alcohol gone?" There's a lot fewer people drinking
Yeah.
alcohol now than there has been historically for I don't even know
Mhm.
how long. So I think a mistake some people are making that they're not prepared for is business as usual is going to
Mhm.
result in, a decline. Like if you're okay with not growth, that's your decision, but you're not going to even stay flat if you're not acknowledging ways to address those issues, the different products people are looking for, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, you probably see it in restaurants you go to that they have way more mocktails. Like it was weird if they even had one. It was like, this is great. Look, they have one. And now you're
Mhm.
seeing them some
All over,
places
yeah.
work on that as much as they do on their one with alcohol.
I don't remember the exact
Mhm.
number, but yeah, it's in the billions of money that has been lost in the alcohol industry
Mhm.
because this generation of drinkers are drinking very low alcohol volumes
Right.
or none at all.
Mhm.
And yeah, even now it's bubbles versus no bubbles too.
Yeah.
There are people who hate bubbles in their canned cocktails, and or they're going seltzerless.
Mhm.
And so yeah, the industry has fractured within the beverage industry into many niches.
Yes.
More than I knew were
Yes.
there. I thought it was just like, beer, bourbon, wine,
Right.
but it has really branched,
Yeah.
and
Right.
that's just within alcohol
Mhm.
or just alcohol. There's kind of like I don't know
Mhm.
what percentage that is considered to be an alcohol beverage, but not.
Yeah.
But that'd be interesting to look up.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, but yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Is there anything what's next for you? What's next for your business? What's going on? What do you see in the future for Talent Kind Search?
You know, um, I have quickly really clung on to the entrepreneur role. It's funny after being in corporate for so long, and now I'm an entrepreneur. So now I'm thinking about ways that I can grow and expand and change my business constantly, or even add-ons to the business.
Mhm,
But probably the most immediate next thing is bringing on, potentially additional staff. I've thought about. I do offer the ability to hire contract workers, so it's normally more just direct hire salaried people, but I now do have the back office support that I can bring on contract workers. I might focus more heavily on that because you're seeing
mhm,
that more often everywhere. People bringing on fractional help, and that's more usually on a 1099 basis, often
mhm.
bringing on fractional help rather than full time help until they're ready for the full time help. So, that's a route that I want to explore more is bringing people on kind of a not attempt to hire, but
Yeah, yeah.
bringing
Oh,
people
that's
on in a fractional role, growing it into full time, and that I can offer that ability so that it's seamless to my client. That I have the ability that I just get the hours, I can process it all. It's good. So I'll probably also look at bring on additional staff to handle the additional influx that will be coming in when I expand the offerings.
mhm,
And I just excited to see about all the different directions that we could take, and then I'm not trying to just be in my micro niche either. I'm excited about where else this can go the
mhm.
longer I'm in business. It's just been a little over a year right now. The longer I'm in business, I'll just see, that I'll see where the clients take me, but might expand to in a lot of other areas.
That's awesome. I
Mhm.
mean, we could have 2 totally different shows just going into the whole ecosystem of temp to hire,
Yeah.
and how that's growing and then the alcohol situation they're in and what they're looking for and how they're surviving and growing despite the changes.
Yeah.
But we'll
Right.
keep those 2 other shows,
Right.
yeah, we could go on all day.
Yeah.
So, is there anything if somebody's interested, where can they find you, or do you have any events or anything planned in the future that people could look you up or just reach out to you?
The best way to find me is probably on LinkedIn, and it's, the name on the end is Carey C. Parks. There's a C in there. I use my middle initial because my middle
Mhm.
name, is my grandmother's maiden name, and I was very
Okay.
close to her, so I feel like when I use that anytime I can, that it's a little bit of a nod to her. So you can
That's
find me
awesome.
on LinkedIn with CareyC Parks, or you can also look up talentkindsearch.com.
Mhm.
If somebody's in the Kansas City area, I'm gonna be in a panel later in the month of April, so hit me up and I'll give you more details on that if you're in the KC area and would be interested in more information about the panel, and it's gonna be focused really on the World Cup coming to Kansas City and the
Yeah.
considerations to take on when you're looking at doing that, and we've got all of these, people that are starting businesses almost
Mm,
exclusively to accommodate the World Cup that may or may not, go even
man.
beyond that. So there's lots of Lots of issues to talk about.
The third episode.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There we go. We've
Wow,
got
that's
a
really cool.
we've
That's
got a
really neat stuff.
series.
Yeah, we got a
Yeah.
series going on.
hmm
So that's really awesome. So I really liked your kind of your general approach, your story of how you've gotten to where you are now from working in the industry itself to taking it under your own wing and forming your own thing. I really kind of like your kind approach and what to look out for, and also just the similarities of some of the industries we work in too, and just
Right.
realizing those problems
hmm
and understanding that a lot of what we do does overlap in different ways
Yep.
and it supports itself. You know, those are the things that kind of stood out to me.
hmm
So I invite listeners to reach out to Carrie if you have those acquisition needs or HR or any HR questions. I'm sure,
Yep.
and
Happy
we'll
to
have
help.
all of her contact information in the show notes through LinkedIn and on how to reach out to her if you do also want to go to that event as well. And again, yeah, if you find yourself in the Kansas City area wanting to throw in an entrepreneur business for the World Cup, she might be somebody to reach out to.
Yep.
So again, Carrie, I want to thank you very much for being on the show. I've really enjoyed this talk. This has been really fun.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been great chatting with you, and I'll look forward to planning the rest of our series.
All right, sounds great. All right, thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you.